All right, hello everyone. Today I have a video for you because I got a question that. Oh, okay. Hello everyone. Today I have a video for you that I'm going to make because I got a question that I think will probably resonate with a lot of people, and I wanted to answer it and just give my perspective because I think it will be very helpful for a lot of people to kind of hear the answer to this. So the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is around how to forgive yourself after you've hurt somebody else. So after you know that you've done something that's hurt someone else, and the other person is still hurting, the other person is still suffering, and you're feeling like, how do you forgive yourself? How do you move on? What do you do with that, with the shame and the guilt and the feeling like you don't deserve to be good? So I'm just going to read the question, and then we can go from there. Okay. So the question was this. I just have to move this for a second. Dear that. Yesterday I was watching your video. There are destructive patterns. Why no shame, guilt is not moral relativism, and decided to share this pain I'm in. About 3 years ago, I hurt someone who was dear to me because I was always indecisive about our relationship with them, whether it was romantic or not, and I ended up giving false hopes. I felt so much pain for hurting them, and even 3 years after, I still get these intense periods of pain because I know that I cannot fix their pain, and this is giving me a sensation that no matter what, I cannot be fully happy because this person might be suffering because of my actions. I feel that it is very unfair that I get to a good place in my life where I'm thriving while another person might be suffering. Do you have any advice on what I can do in this situation? When I try to be compassionate with myself, I always turn again into harsh self-criticism and feeling that I have to make myself very small and not be happy in expressing. Okay, so this I think is actually really common and really normal, especially for deeply empathic people, is that when we kind of realize that we've hurt somebody and we realize that we have done something that we really didn't intend to do that made someone else feel bad, and especially when we see that that person is continuing to feel bad, we can feel like so guilty and so shameful and so bad, and like the worst has happened. And so I want to give you kind of just like a series of steps that you can take if you're in this situation where you feel like you've hurt someone and you don't know how to move on and you don't know how to forgive yourself. That is not going to necessarily be like the most simple quick fix thing, but it's going to be deep work stuff. So the first step that I want you to take when you know that you've hurt somebody is to really sit and figure out what your intentions were. Like what your actual true intentions were when whatever happened that you hurt the other person happened. Meaning, I want you to really look and really consider, why did I do the things that I did? Right? Because a lot of us are going to have this underlying fear, this underlying sense that like we are fundamentally evil, that we did something and we are behaving as though we knew that what we were doing was hurting the person, and we did it anyways, purely to continue to hurt the person. And I really want you to check in with yourself, and I want you to get honest and say, like, did I do what I was doing because I wanted to hurt the person? Did I do what I was doing, and maybe you were doing whatever you were doing, and you realized at some point that you were hurting the person, and you didn't stop. You kept doing what you were doing, knowing that you were hurting them, but you kept going. And I want you again to really ask yourself, why did you do that? Were you doing it because you knew you were hurting them and you wanted to keep hurting them? You were getting pleasure out of their pain? You wanted them to suffer? And I guarantee you that literally, if you're watching this, that's not you. You weren't doing what you were doing because you wanted to hurt somebody. You weren't doing what you were doing from full and complete self-awareness, and then just deciding to make someone's life miserable. So I want you again to really reflect on where was it coming from in you that you did what you did. Were you codependent, right? And you didn't want to hurt them. You didn't want, so in this example, leading somebody on, telling someone that, as in not being totally honest with someone about how you're feeling because you know that they like you or that they want something more from you that you're not going to be able to offer. Understand why, right? Humans have a really hard time with this. We don't want to hurt each other. We don't want others to abandon us. We don't want to lose each other. And often we will get into fight or flight situations when we're in relationship with people. And we know, right, we're not thinking logically and critically and coming from a completely adult perspective when we're interacting with each other most of the time. Yeah? So in this circumstance, you probably weren't there sitting there thinking, okay, well, eventually it's going to come out. I'm going to have to let this person know that I'm not interested and I'm not going to be able to fulfill their desire. I'm not going to be able to do what they want me to do, which would be a romantic relationship. And you probably weren't sitting there being like, eventually I'm going to have to tell this person this. There was always probably in that moment, just like the short term, I don't want to hurt this person. The short term, I'd rather just kick the can, right? I'm just going to let it slide. I'm going to kind of lead them on. I'm not going to be totally honest right now because I don't want to risk hurting them right now. We're all kind of in the moment rather than really thinking about it long term, really thinking about the consequences and the, like I say, the eventually this is going to come out. I'm not going to be able to do what they want me to do. I'm going to have to tell them at some point. We all do this, right? We all kick the can. We all kind of put things off, put our blinders up, go into disaster management in the moments, and that's really the intention, right? And so again, you can understand that you weren't intentionally trying to hurt this person. You weren't intentionally showing up to lead them astray. You weren't trying to make their lives miserable. Yes? So again, get really clear on what happened with yourself and why you did what you did. And then the second thing is make sure that you get really clear on what were the communicated expectations. Because especially as empaths, I think a lot of the time we can kind of overtake responsibility and feel like we should have known what this other person wanted. We should have known what this other person needed. We should have been able to completely predict all the things that were being expected of us or that we could have done or whatever. And that if we weren't perfect for somebody, literally like a perfect parent for somebody, that we should feel bad about that. That if you did communicate your expectations, you did communicate what you were wanting or what you were going to offer or what you were going to do, and the other person had said okay, and then later they weren't okay with it. If you're blaming yourself for that, yes, that's codependency. Yeah. As adults, we are not here to be responsible for what each other wants and needs in a uncommunicated way. And we have to also understand that we're interacting with other adults who generally don't know how to communicate expectation, who generally don't know how to communicate what they want and what they need and what they're really looking for and what they really want from you. That people, again, like that reverse of what we talked about at first, they say they're okay with things, they say they'll do things, they'll lead you on into believing that they're okay with what's going on, and then something happens and they snap. And they say, actually, I wasn't okay with any of this. And then there's this, you should have known. But again, that's one of those situations where you can say, well, nope, it's not actually my job. I communicated what I wanted, and you said you would do it, and then you got mad and changed your mind. That's not your fault. So you need to really start to become clear, again, on what your expectations were, what their communicated expectations were, why you did what you did, and where you can take responsibility and for your traumas and your triggers and your acting out of integrity, and where it was them over expecting of you. Okay? And then when you get clear on what your actual responsibility is. So, and then again, if you're the type of person that gets really defensive and doesn't want to see your part in it at all, that's again your work. If you've hurt somebody and somebody is saying you hurt them, and you are like, no, there's nothing that I did, I was perfect, they are crazy. That's some work that you need to do in yourself. We do really need to check in and say, okay, can I empathize with this person from their perspective? Even if what I did was absolutely not intending to hurt them, and the way that they're perceiving what I did is completely incorrect or whatever, they are still valid in what they perceived the experience to be, even if they're totally incorrect about what the experience was. And sometimes people just need to be empathized with. Like, I can imagine that you would feel this way. I can understand why you perceived what I did and took it that way, and I can see how it would totally look like that to you, but here's what my actual intention was. Here's what I actually meant by that. Here's what I actually did. But being able to take responsibility for your part in it is very important. Okay? So getting clear, what was your part and what was your actual intention? Really question what your actual intention was. The second step is to issue a genuine apology. So most of us never learned how to issue a genuine apology. And that's why I asked you to do that processing work first. Really get clear on what happened, what this person is upset with you about, what you actually did, and why you actually did it. Get clear on that. And then issue the apology without excuses. So whatever it is that you can take responsibility for, take responsibility for it, and don't over-explain yourself. Don't go to the apology with, I did this, but it's not so bad because. Or trying to skirt the blame or trying to point out what was their fault. A true apology is just you taking responsibility for your part, what you did, and if you want to explain, you can explain why you did it, but not as a way of trying to erase what you did, right? As a way of saying, I'm just wanting to tell you where I was actually coming from. I can see that this thing hurt you. I can see that my intention was different than the actual consequence, and being able to admit that and to own up to that like, yes, of course, it was not my intention to hurt you, but intention is not always the same thing as result. And sometimes the result is that we do hurt somebody, even though we didn't intend to. So being able to take ownership that the result overtakes the intention in the moment. So again, in this circumstance, I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to reject you. I didn't want to lose you. And I thought the only way to keep you around was to keep you believing that I was going to give you something in the future. And so you can own that. And you can say, like, that's coming from my trauma, that's coming from my wounding, that's coming from my inability to be honest with you and feel like you were still going to be wanting to be my friend. And I didn't want to lose you as a friend. So I thought the only way to keep you was this, and that was wrong. And that was immature, and I'm sorry that I did that. And so issue a sincere apology, and then ask if there's anything that you can do reasonably to make up for it, right? Ask, is there anything you would like from me to feel that I heard you, and to feel that I validated what I did, and to feel if there's anything that I need to do to make amends. And really get serious about that. Like, what would you be reasonably willing to do in this situation? And usually it's very helpful if you just ask, like, is there something I can do for you? Is there something I can do to show you that I'm sorry? Is there something that I can do to show you that I care and that I understand what I did and I'm not going to do it again? Because this is always the big thing too, is like, we want to demonstrate change behavior. We want to demonstrate that we really learned what we did, why it was harmful, why we did it, and then what we're going to do different in the future. So like in this situation, you're not going to be able to give them what they want, in the sense of you're not going to be able to give them the relationship they want. You were never going to be able to live up to their expectation. And sometimes That's a really hard thing, because there are going to be times when we're in relationship with people where they had a set expectation of you, an expectation of what they wanted from you, and you are just never going to be able to live up to that. And sometimes we have to be okay with, we're going to lose that person because we can't be what they want us to be. We can't give them what they want us to give them. And that's part of learning how to forgive yourself for just, you're a person outside of these other people who is not here to meet the expectations of others. And it's, again, if what they're asking of you is unreasonable, if what they're asking of you is just something you seriously cannot do, it's very imperative that you allow yourself to say, I can't do that for you. I'm never going to live up to that. This is who I really am. This is the relationship you can actually have with me. Do you want that? And then, like I say, in other words, just really, like I say, empathizing with them, and in that asking if there's anything that you can do, ask them, like, very much empathize with how they were feeling, right? In a sincere apology, you empathize with how they were feeling, and you can even ask them again in the apology, like, how were you feeling? Did I get it? Did my apology cover how you were actually feeling? Did my apology cover what it was that actually bothered you about this? Or is there something more that you would like to say, something more you would like to express? Really, like, open the door for them to communicate and feel heard and validated by you in a non-defensive state. And if they get really mad at you, and if they yell at you, and if they character attack you and all this, there's a time and a place for that. But again, if that's going to become a habit, if that person can't also express their pain and express what they're going through without attacking you, without making it all your fault, without character assassinating you, that's, again, a question of, do you need to put up a boundary? Do you really want to be in a relationship with this person that when you hurt them, it's complete, fair game, I'm going to take you down? That might be something you want to question, right? So can you give them space to express? Can you give them space to ask what they need from you to feel better, and what your change behavior is going to be in the future? And then that's the last thing, is to really understand, okay, what did I learn from this situation? And that lesson might be a hard lesson. I learned that I need to be honest with someone about my feelings before I lead them on, even though I know it's going to hurt them in the short run. It's better for everyone long term that we're honest. And really take time to fully consider what you learned from the situation. And do this from a place of self-love. Because here's the bottom line. None of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. None of us want to hurt each other. If you're watching this, I know that you know, if you really check in with yourself, you're not the scary, evil person you think you are. And this is the part of the reason why we hold on to the shame and the guilt. So when we've done everything we can possibly do, and I know that there are going to be times and places where we don't have access to the person, we can't apologize, we can't make amends, something has happened, they've passed on or whatever, where we feel guilty about someone or something that we can't contact and we can't have this conversation with. And in that situation, I would invite you to write a letter. Do this process as though they're there. The apology process, the thinking of if there's anything that you can do differently. You can do this process on your own to work through your side of it. What you did, why you did it, what your intentions were, what happened there, and then what you learned from it, even without the other person, if they're not available, because sometimes that's going to be the case. So do that, do your processing work, figure out what it is that happened, figure out why it happened, figure out what your intentions were, figure out all of that stuff, what you actually intended, what you were afraid of, where your traumas were coming up, why you behaved the way you behaved, how you can be different in the future. And then the last thing is that we have to have compassion with ourselves, because we are all human and we are all going to hurt each other. And when we have done everything we can do to remedy the situation, If the other person is not ready to forgive, if the other person is going to keep carrying it forward as pain in their bodies, if they're going to keep having resentment, if they're going to keep feeling terrible about what you did, if they're going to keep feeling rejected by you, if they're going to keep all of these things, this is where you have to say, okay, we are both adults, and everybody gets to decide for themselves what they're going to do with their experiences. So you have taken as much responsibility as you can take for what happened. And then now it's their responsibility what they're going to do with it. And we have to understand that we are not caretakers for each other. We are not each other's gatekeepers. We cannot take responsibility for how other people choose to respond to what happens. So like I said, this is not saying you hurt somebody and you just say, well, whatever, they're an adult, they can choose to be fine. We are empathetic people. We are caring people who care about other people. So you're going to go through this process. You're going to self-reflect. You're going to apologize. You're going to ask how you can make amends. You're going to validate. You're going to do all these things. And once you have done that, you have done all that you can do. And then it is that other person's responsibility what they do with their life experiences, what they do with the hurt, what they do with the rejection. Because again, like in this situation, you're never going to be able to give them what they wanted. You're not interested in the relationship they want. So now that person gets to be an adult and decide, does that mean I'm miserable now for the rest of my life that I got rejected by somebody I loved? Or does it mean they're going to do the healing work to move on from that? And you don't get to determine anyone else's journey for them. So if someone else in that situation is choosing to continue to be hurt and not get over it and not move on, after you've done everything that you can do, it isn't your job anymore. It isn't your responsibility. And like I say, if you can say, well, what did I learn from that? What am I going to do different in the future? How am I going to change my behavior so that this situation doesn't happen again with someone else or with them or whatever? You got what you got out of it. You empathized. You apologized. You are going to demonstrate your changed behavior. You're going to grow. And then you can't force someone else to grow. Because again, that other person gets to decide now. Is this going to be a reason I'm not happy for the rest of my life or not? Because ultimately, if it wasn't you, someone else was going to hurt them in that way. We're all going to get hurt by each other. And you're going to recognize this in yourself. You've been hurt by lots of people. You've been let down by lots of people. You've been rejected. You've been abandoned. You've been abused. You've been all of these things. And the real power of being an adult is that ultimately we get to decide what we're going to do with that stuff. We get to decide if it's going to destroy us or if it's going to be something that we learn from and get stronger. Right? In these situations. And especially when you have made amends and you've done all that you can do, you've taken responsibility for your part in it, you can't take responsibility for their growth path anymore. That's codependency. And so really check in again. What are you afraid of that you are going to become if you forgive yourself? And that's why I wanted you to check in at the very beginning with what your actual intentions were. Because most of us are afraid to forgive ourselves and are afraid to continue to be happy and afraid to be ourselves when we think that we've hurt somebody. Because we think if I don't keep reminding myself of how horrible I was, if I don't keep reminding myself of that terrible thing I did, I'm going to do it again because I'm just an unconscious monster, right? And you're going to recognize that you were essentially unconscious of what you were doing and why you were doing it when you were hurting somebody. You're not going to look back and be like, I was fully and completely aware of what the consequences of my actions were going to be, that I was going to hurt this person. And I did it purely because I wanted to hurt them. Like, this is the thing that we're all afraid that we are. We all think that I just found out there's this monster inside of me. And now I have to be constantly vigilant to be on top of this monster. Otherwise, this monster is going to take over my life and destroy all my relationships. When the real reality is, no, you just discovered a hurting part of you. You discovered a codependent part of you. You discovered a part of you that took the reins and did the short term thing, yes, to try to save you from long term consequences. The, the, you just discovered a part of you that was traumatized and immature, but you didn't just discover an evil, horrible part of you. And that's what you need to recognize in yourself. That with the shame and the guilt, you're coming from a place of you just discovered some sort of monster in you that you got blindsided by them, this part of you that hurt this other person that you didn't want to hurt. But so again, did you do it knowing you were hurting the other person and continuing to do it because you knew it was going to hurt them? Or were you actually trying to not hurt them? Right? In so much of the time in what we do, we were just doing what we thought we had to do in the moment to not hurt the person in the moment. And it ends up hurting them long term. And then we think, I'm just like a horrible monster for doing that manipulative, horrible thing. And it's like, no, your intention was you didn't want to hurt them. Your intention was you were acting from childlike consciousness of this is just what I have to do right here, right now in the moment so they don't get mad at me. Right? And that's really where most of it comes from. That's usually why we people please. That's why we're codependent. That's why we do what we do. Because we have that little child inside that just gets really scared, realizes we're not going to be able to be what the other person wants, realizes the other person had an expectation of us that they didn't communicate and we didn't know about, or that they did communicate and we said we could do and we actually couldn't. We didn't really check in with ourselves. We weren't self-aware. We were just in child disaster management mode. And being able to validate that in yourself, that you didn't discover a monster, and it's not guilt and shame that's going to prevent you from doing it in the future. Rather, you need to mature this part of yourself. And this part of yourself matures through being loved and witnessed. And I want you to understand that guilt and that shame that comes up, that harsh self-criticism, that's a part of you that's trying to protect you. Right? That part of you is coming up because it's wanting to say, if I just do all the right things, if I just keep on the toes, I'll never hurt anyone again, and then I'll never be rejected again. If I just yell at myself enough, if I make myself feel bad enough, if I make myself small enough, I'll never do anything harmful to anyone else again, and then I'll never be rejected, and I'll never hurt anyone, and I'll never be in this situation again. And we have to realize that's not true. We're gonna accidentally hurt people. We're gonna say we can do stuff we can't do. We're gonna go into that fight or flight child mode of just, what do I have to do right now? What do I have to say right now so that you don't get mad at me? That later on is a consequence. These are not bad parts of ourselves. We're not monsters who are trying to hurt each other. We're just scared children who don't want to be rejected, who don't want to be abandoned, who are doing our best to try to be in relationship with a bunch of people that also don't know what they need and what they want or how to communicate, that have expectations of us that we can't live up to, that we try and kick the can on. So really be with this part of yourself that's saying, I can't forgive me because then I'm going to do it again, and be like, that you're just here trying to protect me. You're trying to, and you're trying to figure out every little detail of every little thing that I could have done different, and that too, when we get into, we are trying to take responsibility for other people's behavior, other people's uncommunicated expectations, other people saying they were okay with something when they weren't, other people's desires that we knew we weren't going to be able to live up to, and saying, I'm a bad person for that. When really it's like, no, you're not here to live up to everyone's expectation. You're not here to be what everyone wants you to be for them. And when you're walking your authentic path, there are going to be times where you just say, hey, I see that this is what you're wanting from me, and I'm never going to be that. I can't do that for you, right? We all think that the perfect spiritual person or whatever is the person who never makes anyone upset. And that's not reality. Because people are not you. And they're going to have expectations of you that don't align with who you are. And they're going to have expectations of circumstance that you're not going to be able to deliver on. And there are going to be times where people don't communicate with you what they really wanted and then come back at you being like, you should have known. And this is learning that, like, no, that's codependency. So again, you do what you can do. You change your behavior when you've authentically hurt somebody, and learn from it. Learn what you did. Learn why you did it. And again, the reason that you did it is not because you wanted to hurt somebody. You're always going to find that there was an innocent part of you that was just trying to protect yourself, to make the other person happy, that just didn't want to deal with the pain in the moment. And that's all innocent. And then you got to learn that that's not how you're going to be moving forward. Moving forward, you're going to be more honest. You're going to be more open. You're going to be more face the fear of letting someone down. And that's real reality. You're never going to be someone who never lets somebody down again. You're never going to be somebody who never hurts somebody again. You're never going to be perfect. None of us are. So instead of expecting that from yourself, just say, it's okay. I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to continue on with my self-awareness journey. I'm going to continue asking myself why I'm doing what I'm doing in my relationships, why I'm saying yes to things, why I'm communicating the way I'm communicating, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm going to be checking in with myself. Is this codependency or is this real? Is this true? Am I communicating my expectation? Am I asking the other person to clarify their expectations? Am I being clear on what I am willing and not willing to do? Am I willing to let somebody down in the short term to avoid a long-term consequence? Learn. And then you got to move on with your life. And understand that the other person is an adult who gets to decide for themselves if they're going to let what happened destroy them or make them better. Because you can't make that choice for them. You can only make that choice for yourself. So you've taken responsibility again, right? This is not just anytime I hurt somebody, it's just their job to like figure it out. No, of course not. We do what we can do because we love people. And we really do want to admit where we went wrong, and we really do want to grow. Not from a place of guilt and shame, but from a place of self-love and compassion. These are just immature parts. And then we move on. We change, we grow, we know we're going to do something different in the future. And that's only going to be possible if we're loving ourselves. You're going to do the exact same thing over and over and over again. If you keep shaming this part of yourself, it will never grow. And you will continue to repeat this behavior. If you really want to change your behavior, you have to love these parts of yourself. Understand their innocence. Understand what they were wanting. Understand, okay, I feel you, I hear you, but we are never going to be a person that never disappoints someone again. We are never going to be a person who can always be what other people want us to be. We're never going to be that. So we got to get comfortable with letting people down. And how do we do that? By loving ourselves, by validating ourselves, by being our own safe place. That we're not going to lose ourselves, even if we hurt someone. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. You're going to love yourself. You're going to move on. And you're going to allow the other person to go through their process. You've done what you can do, and now it's up to them. And you got to let them be an adult. You can't take responsibility for them. And that's what we want to do a lot of the time as codependents, is we really want to take responsibility for other people's feelings, and we can't. We have to let them be an adult. Okay, so I got one question here. Hi, Leah, this is very helpful for me at the moment. Do you have any suggestions if the hurt kid in me feels like mourning and freaking out having let down someone close who reacted harshly? Yes, do that. Go in your space, let yourself freak out about the fact that you let someone down. Let yourself freak out. Let that inner child have that panic attack. And then, this is the really important part. Bring yourself back into reality as to what actually happened. Did you die? Did you lose your capacity to provide for yourself? Did you lose your capacity to eat and sleep and get love and all of these things? Because that's really what we're afraid of, right? Like that inner child that's so afraid of losing someone is still in the codependent childhood state. That when I lose love and approval, I lose everything. Because I'm not an adult, and I don't have control over myself, and I don't have control over the resources, and I can't provide for myself, and everything comes from the outside, so if I lose it from the outside, I'm going to die. And so it's important to validate that child part, let them have their meltdown, let them have their freak out. Yes, feel all that, shake, cry, let it all happen, but then bring yourself into your adult awareness. That like, okay, even if this person completely rejects me and leaves me and I never see them again, I'm not going to die. They're not in control of my life. I'm an adult who can make adult choices now. Because that's, again, that's the codependency we're all running from. That we all still feel like we're those victim children that need approval, otherwise we're going to die. And so it's very important that we bring ourselves into the adult present and say, yes, that was true in childhood. It was absolutely devastating to me to be cut off from my caregivers who provided everything for me in my childhood. But I'm an adult now who can figure things out. So even if I lose this person, even if I lose these things, I'm still okay. And we gotta keep reminding ourselves of that. That's why this self-love journey is this. It's learning to be your own parent. It's learning to understand that you're an adult now. You're resourced in a way that you weren't as a child. You're not trapped the way you were as a child. You have choices now the way you didn't as a child. And we have to really validate our adult selves. So that's the last part, right? We're keeping ourselves small and keeping ourselves in guilt and shame because we still feel like if we get rejected by someone, we're going to die. And we're trying to protect ourselves from that. And we have to look at the reality is that we can be rejected and be fine. That people can get mad at us and never come back and freak out, and we will still be okay. And then we'll start to figure out what's codependent and what's not. When we really realize our agency. That as adults, we can be rejected by everyone. Even if we turn into the most horrible person and destroy everyone and it's all horrible, you can still survive. And then that's where the non-morality comes in. It will still feel bad to hurt other people, but not for this moral reason. It's just because we're all connected. And then when you've done all that you can do, you gotta let yourself move on. Learn what you needed to learn, take what you needed to take, grow from it. Know that you grew. And keep reminding that inner child that we can be rejected and we can be okay. We can be strong. We're gonna be okay. We're never gonna live up to everyone's expectations. We're always gonna have things like this. So communicate the best you can. That. One more question. What if it's more a fear of not knowing what is real, my perspective, or theirs, and I can't tell how bad what I did was? Reality feels so slippery sometimes. Yes. Okay, so again, give them the opportunity to share their perspective. Give them the opportunity to share what their expectations were and how you didn't meet them and what it was that they wanted that you weren't able to give. And then you need to be able to say reasonably, I couldn't do that, or I could do that, or now that you've explained that to me, I'm happy to do that now. Or again, I wasn't clear on what that was. And again, it is true that sometimes the perspective is slippery because we are codependent. There's a lot of people you're going to have interactions with that are not self-aware enough to know that I was projecting onto you. I expected this thing of you, and it's not fair of me to say that you need to be this for me, otherwise I can't be happy. Right? People aren't always going to have awareness of their expectations of you. And that is a very hard thing to deal with. But you need to understand, again, there are just going to be times and places where people have unrealistic expectations of you or uncommunicated expectations of you, and you need to say, they are still an adult. And if they are not ready and willing to take responsibility for their expectations, to even become aware of what they wanted, why they were triggered, why they were hurt by you, you can't do that work for them. So again, you've done all that you can reasonably do. You've said sorry for what you know you can say sorry for. You've taken responsibility for what you can take responsibility for. They're still upset, and they're saying there's nothing you can do, or you need to do some very specific thing that you can't do for them. That might be a thing where you have to move on. But it's again, I think if you really look at your intentions, what you wanted from the situation, what you were trying to do for them, and what the expectations for the interaction were on your end. And if you communicated that clearly and what your expectations were and all that stuff, you've done all you can do. Because again, not everyone is self-aware, not everyone's on this journey. And we kind of have to be okay with that. That there are just going to be people who aren't. Yes, of course, I'll post it in my IGTV. People who aren't as aware and aren't ready and willing to take responsibility for their side of it. And that's why I say we have to have those boundaries of, if you've done all you can do, you communicated your expectation, you tried your best to validate and empathize with them, you've done all that you can do in the way of um, getting their expectation met as much as you can, as much as you reasonably can. And then if you still can't, and if they're still upset and they aren't willing to communicate with you what you could do different or what you could do to make it better, or if the thing that they want you to do to make it better is not something you can do, you just need to say, I can't do that. This isn't my job anymore. If they really just want to stay mad at me, they can. If they want to tell me what I can do to fix it, they can. If not, it's kind of the ball's in their court. And we have to let it be that. And like I say, sometimes we're just going to lose people. We're not going to be able to make it better. And we have to be okay with that. Okay? So that's my answer to that question. Really love that inner child part of you that's afraid to forgive you. That's just a part that's really afraid that if you get rejected, you're going to die. So if you've done all that you can do, you need to be okay with, this person isn't going to love me, this person isn't going to forgive me, this person isn't going to move on, and that can't be my job. They are now hurting themselves, holding themselves in that place of not forgiving, not moving on, staying hurt, and that's their choice. It's their life. But you've done it. You're not going to do that again in the future. When you see this situation happening again, you're going to do something different. Even though it's hard and scary, you're going to be more okay with rejection, more okay with losing people, and you got to move on with your life and let them be an adult who's responsible for their own happiness. Okay? So take your responsibility, do what you can do, learn what you need to learn from it, love these parts of yourself, and then you decide to move on and grow, and that other person gets to decide if they're going to do that or not. But they're an adult and you can't make that choice for them. Okay? So I hope that was helpful. I love you. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, have a great day, have a great night, have a great month. I'll see you soon. Mwah.